Okay, so this is a uniform, right? Just fabric, some thread, a symbol of authority. But what if I told you it was also a map of an entire nation's economy? Well, today we're going to follow the thread of this one uniform to unpack a huge multi-billion-dollar story about Nigeria's economy, its security, and really, its future.
So, that brings us to the central question for this whole explainer. What can a uniform really tell you about a nation's economy? Well, the answer, and this might surprise you, is a whole lot.
All right, so to understand this, our story has to start with the Nigeria Customs Service, or NCS for short. Now, this is an agency that's operating under some serious pressure, and its role, well, it goes way beyond what you probably think.
You know, when most of us think of customs, we just picture border control, right? Stamping passports, checking luggage. But the NCS? They're one of the main economic engines for the entire Nigerian state. I mean, they're responsible for a massive chunk of the country's revenue. So their efficiency, how they operate, it's absolutely critical for the nation's development.
Their main job is something called revenue generation. And in the simplest terms, that just means they collect the money that the government needs to pay for, well, everything. We're talking roads, schools, hospitals, you name it. And for a country like Nigeria that's working hard to build a really diverse economy, that makes the Customs Service absolutely vital. And get this, their mandate is huge. I mean, they're not just collecting revenue. Nope, they're also out there fighting smugglers, they're helping legitimate businesses with trade, and they're even gathering the data the government needs to plan for the future. It's an incredibly diverse and really important set of responsibilities.
Okay, so now that we have the big picture of what the NCS does, let's zoom way in, right down to something very specific. The uniforms these officers wear. Because trust me, this is where the economic story really starts to get fascinating.
And don't just take my word for it. Listen to this quote from the Customs Comptroller General back in 2014. He basically says that the new uniforms weren't just about looking good. No, this was a deliberate strategy, a way to modernize the service, boost morale, and project a whole new image of authority.
So, this visual rebranding, it actually happened in a few key phases. For a long time, the officers wore this kind of light gray amoeba-based camouflage. But then, in 2014, a brand new combat-style uniform was rolled out, specifically for those high-risk anti-smuggling and anti-terrorism operations. And a few years later, in 2018, they added a new white-top uniform, which was designed to be more comfortable and professional for officers working in offices and airports.
And this really shows you the strategic shift that was happening, right? The NCS was moving away from having just one single traditional uniform for everybody and toward a whole range of specialized gear. The goal was pretty clear: equip officers for their actual jobs, whether that's out on a combat operation or in an office, and at the same time present a more modern, capable face to the world. But, and this is a big but, all of this modernization came with a very, very big price tag. And that price tag ended up raising a multi-billion-dollar question that went all the way to the nation's parliament. Okay, get ready for this number. This is what made everyone stop in their tracks. 4.3 billion naira. And that was just for 1 year. That was the estimated budget for uniforms in 2016. And not just for customs, but across all of Nigeria's military and paramilitary services.
And just look at how that breaks down. The Nigerian army and the police, they took the biggest pieces of the pie, obviously, but the spending was completely across the board. The prison service, immigration, all of them. We're talking about a massive, nationwide procurement effort. So, to put that 4.3 billion naira figure into perspective for a global audience, at the time, that was worth about 14.1 million US dollars. But here's the really crucial detail, the part that got everyone's attention. According to parliamentary records, all of that money was being spent to buy these uniforms from foreign markets. Every single dollar was leaving the Nigerian economy.
And as you can imagine, that one fact sparked a massive, fierce debate. The question was simple, but powerful. Why was a country with its very own textile industry spending millions and millions of dollars abroad for uniforms? This became known as the Great Made in Nigeria debate.
And look, this wasn't just chatter. This was serious business. What you're seeing is an official motion brought right before the Nigerian parliament in 2016. You had lawmakers formally on the record demanding to know why the country was so dependent on foreign markets for something as seemingly basic as a uniform.
So the whole debate pretty much boiled down to this. On one side, you had the status quo. Just keep relying on the foreign supply chains that were already in place.
But on the other side was this really powerful economic argument. What if we produce these uniforms locally? Think about it. That could strengthen the naira, create thousands of jobs for textile workers, and breathe new life into Nigeria's own manufacturing industries.
And the lawmakers who were pushing for this change, they made a really good point. They said, hey, this isn't some radical, crazy idea. They pointed to lots of other major nations, China, Brazil, India, even France, that already produce their own military and paramilitary uniforms. It's actually a pretty common practice for countries that want to be more self-sufficient.
So, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this really fascinating question that goes so much deeper than just uniforms. For any nation, really, what's more valuable? A polished, world-class look that you get from a global supply chain, or a homegrown identity built by your own people? It's a huge question, one that stitches together economics, national policy, and of course, a whole lot of national pride.